Penguin Random House Canada presents Private Power, Public Purpose, Adventures in Business, Politics, and the Arts by Thomas d'Aquino, read for you by the author. For Susan, my North Star. Introduction. Private power, public purpose is based on the underlying premise that humans are invested with power, the power to think and to act, and, in the best of all possible worlds, to act for the benefit of others and society as a whole. The more power one has, the more consequential becomes its exercise. History teaches us that power often corrupts, and wielded with malice can do great harm. Those who possess great power face a formidable test of character. Abraham Lincoln summed it up with the words, "Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power." Leadership, then, must be judged by how power is exercised and for what purpose. This is a book about power and purpose. It's also about responsibility, with leadership being a common theme throughout. As fortune would have it, for a good part of my life, considerable power was invested in my role as a business leader, power that, to the best of my abilities, I sought to exercise with great care, sometimes with success, sometimes not. In the main, this memoir tells that business story with perspectives as well on political power and the power of philanthropy in the arts. Issues, people, and events form the backbone of this memoir. It covers a transformative period in Canadian economic and political history, beginning in the 1960s and leading up to the present day. Significantly, it chronicles a fundamental transition in the culture of business in Canada, a transition in which I was privileged to play a central part. This memoir speaks to the origins of the greatly enhanced role for Canadian business in the shaping of national public policy, beginning with the creation of the Business Council on National Issues, BCNI, in the late 1970s. I led the BCNI, subsequently known as the Canadian Council of Chief Executives, CCCE, and today as the Business Council of Canada, BCC, from 1981 to 2009. During my years at the Council's helm, I worked with over 1,000 chief executives and entrepreneurs, as well as other leaders in Canada and internationally. Their engagement, support, and our collaboration form a crucially important part of the story I tell. Public policy figures prominently throughout this book, and the policy domains covered are many. They include competitiveness, fiscal policy, trade, taxation, employment, labor relations, inflation, energy, the environment, corporate governance, and foreign policy and defense. Intimate insights are offered on the great policy debates of the day, including free trade, national unity, defense policy, and the environment. I describe in considerable detail my activities as a business ambassador and my work on 5 continents. While hugely stimulating, my job as the CEO of the CEOs was not always an easy one. Being an activist surrounded by powerful people led inevitably to charges of excessive influence. I took no comfort in being decried as Canada's de facto Prime Minister, and I write candidly of how I countered this perception by employing every diplomatic tool at my disposal and partaking eagerly in respectful public debate. That did not stop death threats, an invasion of my office by masked intruders, ugly attacks in print and in person, and a burning in effigy of the streets of Ottawa. But I soldiered on, convinced that the responsible exercise of power, aimed ultimately at promoting the public good, would lead to a more prosperous, inclusive, and compassionate country. The overarching theme of this book is leadership, and what it means to me. I write about leaders from the worlds of business, politics, public policy, and the arts, who have inspired me. No one has inspired me more than my wife, Susan, who, for more than a half-century, has traveled my journey with me while pursuing her own remarkable career in the public service of Canada. My book is dedicated to her. It begins with my happy childhood growing up as the son of Italian immigrant parents in the beautiful Kootenay region of British Columbia, and traces my formal and informal educational journey, concluding with studies at the University of London. My return from England and work in Montreal leads to my years on Parliament Hill, serving Cabinet Minister James Richardson and Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. My early entrepreneurial years are chronicled in London, Paris, and Ottawa, followed by my 3 decades as the founding CEO of the Business Council of Canada, and my work as a corporate director with several global enterprises. I turn to the arts and philanthropy in the latter part of this memoir, with a prominent mention of the National Arts Centre and detailed insights on the National Gallery of Canada, where I served as a founding director of its foundation and chair for 18 years. Part memoir, part history, and part political and economic commentary, this memoir concludes with an epilogue titled Reaching for Gold, a challenge to Canadians to marshal our collective talent and resources to make Canada the best country in the world in which to live, work, invest, and grow. Rockcliffe Park, Ottawa. Chapter 1. Beginnings. This would be a very different story if a young man standing on the ramparts of a town in eastern Sicily had not exclaimed, "Basta! Enough!" My father, Cateno, born in 1901, was on leave in picturesque Taormina from his Carabinieri troop. It was the early 20s, and Sicily was immersed in conflict. Communists and fascists were in violent confrontation in the streets, and civil order was severely threatened. My father was proud of being a Carabinieri. Created by King Victor Emmanuel of Savoy in 1814, the Royal Carabinieri Corps played an important role in the evolution of Italy. More than a national gendarmerie, it was organized as a military force and to this day is considered part of Italy's armed forces. My father's hope that Italy, emerging from the bloody conflict of World War I, would see positive and real change sweep across the land had been shattered. He once told me of an incident on the outskirts of the ancient city of Syracuse, where his commanding officer issued an order. In the face of a mortal threat, shoot first, ask questions later. My father had sworn allegiance to the King of Italy and saw communists, fascists, and other radicals as dangerous. With the formation of the National Fascist Party in Italy in 1921, under the leadership of Benito Mussolini, and with fascist gangs increasingly asserting themselves in the streets, with calls for a takeover of power in the country, he made what he often referred to as the most painful decision of his life, to leave his family, friends, and the camaraderie of the Carabinieri behind, and to reach out for a life in the New World. In early 1924, he sailed for Canada, and upon arrival, immediately headed west, where he had heard that fortunes were to be made in mining.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?